Hi guys, welcome to the channel. My name's Chris Wright. I'm a landscape photographer working out of Granada, Spain. Now this week I wanted to revisit DxO Photolab and the Nik Collection, the new version of the Nik Collection, because there's an aspect of the Nik Collection that I've grown to really like in the last few weeks, which is the new colour mask, and I think this is something that actually delivers a lot more value than you might think at first. So we're going to have a look at the entire workflow of processing the picture that you can see on the screen behind me, I hope. And we're going to go into Photolab initially, do the corrections on the crop, on the straightening of the horizon, and then the general contrast and colour corrections there. We're going to have a look at the HSL tool, and then we're going to demonstrate how the colour mask tool used in the Nik Collection can actually offer a great deal more precision in terms of what you're doing with your colour throughout the picture. Okay, so let's get into it. Okay, here we are on Photolab, and this is a picture that I took in the Tabernas Desert a couple of months ago, handheld, as you can see. Horizon's madly wonky, and there's a lot wrong with this picture in terms of corrections that we want to apply in Photolab. So I'm going to do this in two stages. One is to basically do the corrective elements, straighten the picture, change the contrast, take some of the bright blue out of the sky, make it match somewhat better. We want a sort of uniform warmth across the picture, and we want to bring out the colours in the puddles here and in the mountains there, in order to enhance what are effectively leading lines, which at the moment you can't see very clearly, but all lines are leading to the centre of the picture, including the clouds, and we want to really enhance that. So let's get stuck in. So we'll do the horizon first. Okay, that's given me a much straighter horizon. I think that's more or less it. So now we will go to the crop tool, and I'm going to choose my go-to 16:9 for this. Take this down, get the right sort of balance in the picture. We want a little bit of that. I think that's about right. Okay, good. So that's something of an improvement already. So there's my original, there's my cropped version. So far, so good. Okay, let's have a look now and see what we've got. So if we're looking at the histogram here, we've got a lot of room left and right. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to tweak the exposure, but not by much. I think we can afford to come up. Okay. Now, I don't want to blow the highlights, not that there's much danger of that, but so let's just take that exposure up a little bit more. Drop the highlights a tiny little bit. I'm going to lift the shadows a tiny little bit and adjust my blacks a little bit there. Okay, we're not going to do anything there, so with contrast I think a little bit of contrast globally is going to help this along a bit, and obviously not as much as that, but just bring it to around about there. And what I'm really interested in getting to here is the water that's lying on the surface, or the sort of salt stains that are lying on the surface. I don't want to lose those. And I want to make the overall temperature a little bit warmer. Okay, that's beginning to look almost sensible. Okay, now I think from here, if we're just going into the colour tab here, I want to take a close look at the HSL tool, because what I'm going to do is I'm going to go into Nik Collection and compare the tools that we've got in the Nik Collection with the HSL tool. So HSL tool, as a refresher, here is hue, saturation and luminance. That's it. You can go into the channel mixer and play around there, but it's not the most intuitive tool. What you're doing effectively is mimicking the effect of placing a filter on the old-fashioned film developing. So bearing in mind that every colour is made out of red, green and blue, manipulating that red filter is going to have a measurable effect on sometimes areas that you're not so sure about. So this already is looking quite a lot better. I'm going to push up the whites a little bit in here. Okay, that's now, I think, where I want it. Let's just have a look at sort of 75%. So yeah, this is beginning to look the part. Nice and sharp. We've got these clouds here. Probably want a bit more contrast in there. Okay, so I'm still not totally happy with the way that the leveling has been done. So what I'm realizing is that this mountain here is actually closer to us than this one. So using that as my line was a mistake. I should really use something about the clouds as a better means of doing this. So let's just revisit that. We'll go into customize. Okay, I think that's better. Just adjust that crop. That's still slightly missing pixel. Let's quick take 2 on that. That's it. Okay, good. I think this is now sitting right for me. So let's go into this and see what we can do in the Nik Collection. Now, what I want to demonstrate is the color mask, and I want to, before I do that, just refresh us on HSL. So if we go back to our HSL tool, we've got basically hue, saturation and luminance. These are the things that we can affect in HSL. If I turn it on, we can, let's choose our orange, let's choose our thing, we can drop the dropper, and then this gives us the scope of what we're altering. Okay, so if I move the hue, I can change the hue of everything that is affected in that selection. Now, quite obviously from what I've just done, you can see that everything below the sky, so everything except for the sky and the clouds, are selected within that. Now if I close this right down, it's slightly moderated, but frankly not by a massive amount. And I think that this doesn't really give me the level of control I need. For me, that selection is too wide. If I go here, it shifts it up towards the green a little bit, but you're still getting a big difference. And where this cuts in is that the water on the sands here, clearly there are areas here where it is definitely yellow, but here it isn't. And what I'm seeing here is the entire sand shift towards those yellow hues, and I'm not massively keen on that. I want to keep this real. Okay, so for better control, what I can do is go into the Nik Collection. So go to Photo Library, go to the Nik Collection, and there's a couple of things that I'm going to want to do in here. Let's first of all go to Color Effects. Alright, so if I go to Pro Contrast and just add a blank filter in here, now I can increase the contrast without radically changing the colour here, and that's what I'm after. Now this means that I can get this to the sort of contrast levels that I want. Don't want to alter that sky at all, and I'm fine with that. That's nice, I like that. What I will want to do though is to alter this sky. Now I can do that with a colour mask. There's nothing that allows me to reduce the saturation of that sky, and that's what I really want to do. I want to make the hills more saturated and the sky less saturated, so I'm not going to be able to accomplish that in Pro Contrast, so we'll just delete that adjustment. Okay, and let's just come back to our global adjustment here. That was pretty much where we wanted it. Okay, now I'm going to take this to Viveza. It's going to save my corrections here. Alright. And in here, I'm going to take a colour mask of that sky, and I'm going to kill the saturation. I want it to be slightly blue, but really not much. And I know this is stepping away from photorealism a little bit, but for me, it's something that helps me to get the viewer to look at the area of the picture that I want them to be drawn into. Okay, so that's one colour mask. That's allowed us to get at that. Now, what I'm going to do is another colour mask. So we'll add a second colour mask and we'll make this one about these. So I want to make the oranges slightly more warm. We go down below it, we can see it's picked the orange there. And that's made it slightly warmer. Perhaps a little less on that. And a tiny little bit on the saturation. And this has worked quite nicely. This has worked well. So the issue that I've solved here, or the challenge that I was facing, was in Photolab, I wasn't able to separate the grey tones of the sand from the brown tones of the mountain. So my selections were altering the colour of the foreground to an extent that I really didn't want, and that's solved. So here in 2 steps we've managed to resolve that, and that is down to selective use of the colour mask in Pro Contrast and in Viveza. And key to this is very, very gentle increments on the sliders. Apply this and we can compare the versions. Okay, so that's our finished article, and that's as it came out of Photolab. That is our original photograph, so a world of difference. This is already a big improvement on that, and for me, I think this is another step forward from the original. Okay, excellent, good stuff. Back to the studio. Okay guys, so that's the demonstration. I think for me, I've been very pleasantly surprised by this. I was perfectly happy with the with the HSL tool, with some exceptions. I had the business about controlling the range of the colour control, and of course the fact you're limited to hue, saturation and luminance, of course, is a big thing here. But for photographs like this one, it was absolutely essential that we didn't turn the entire desert orange. And it was a lot easier to accomplish that using the colour masks in Nik Collection, in Viveza and in Pro Contrast. So I'm happy with the result of this, and I think this is something worth persevering with, or worth pursuing. I hope this has been useful, guys, and if it is, there'll be another video on Nik Collection and Photolab next week. Okay, so we'll see you there, I hope. Thanks for watching, and oh, don't forget to hit the subscribe button and the like button down below, and see you next week. Bye now.